Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Dom Dumas, and I'm in Bangkok. Hockey and the NHL, episode 23. First, before I get started in this, again, I have to apologize. Like I had told you before, I had some audio problems, and then I found out I had some video problems. The video problem being the fact that my computer had crashed. It's fixed now, but my computer had crashed, and that's where I had my video file saved, and then I ended up losing it all because I had to have a new hard drive installed, and it was just a huge nightmare. And that's one. And two, the second thing that happened is my sister was here. I was on vacation and she visited. She was here for about a week or so, and we'd gone away to an island and stuff like that. And it was great having her here. It was the first time I'd seen her in like 6 years. But I'll do a whole podcast all about that, about her time here, or at least one of the places that we went, which is really exciting. And I'm really looking forward to that. So now I'm back. I'm rip roaring and ready to go, and I'm ready to come back at you. So, I wanted to start off by telling you, as I had discussed before in episode 17 and episode 21, I started ice skating when I was about 2 years old, and you can hear me talk a little bit about that on episode 21, which is at domdumas.com/21, and also episode 17, which is domdumas.com/17. My parents wanted to get me into, or decided to get me into skating when I was really at a very young age. Most people I know of that get into hockey don't actually get into hockey until like 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, and they don't actually start skating until they're probably about 7 or something like that. But growing up in Minnesota, we start a little bit younger when it comes to stuff like this. I also started playing in an organized hockey that was organized by what they called MAHA at the time, MAHA, which is the Minnesota Amateur Hockey Association, or was, I should say was, because everything now across the United States is USA Hockey. I don't think there's any more state-affiliated only organizations. But anyway, so yeah, I started playing hockey at about age 4, and I played in this league that was called the Mites, which is for really young kids, and that was from about age 4 to age 7. And I remember every game was outside, and I was cold. It was cold when you're in the winter in the Minnesota. It gets really quite cold, but when you're playing hockey, I never really thought, or when I was playing hockey anyway, I don't remember ever really thinking about it very much while I was playing or when I was skating. I don't remember ever complaining about how cold it was. It just meant the ice was that much faster. But I didn't know that until later. But yeah, it was great. I loved it. I loved playing hockey. If I'm not mistaken, at one point in time during this league, at one of the years that I played in this league, we had a shutout. One of the teams that I played with, we had a shutout, which means we went completely... sorry, we didn't have a shutout. We had a few shutouts, but we went undefeated, which means we didn't lose a single game during that season. That only happened to me like twice that I can remember. And the first time was during the Mites. I think I played goaltender during one of these games at that age. And then after that, next at about from ages 8 to 9, I moved up to the next level of hockey, which would have been squirts. And again, every game at this point in time was still outside. This is when my position in hockey kind of was assigned to me, or I started playing a regular position. I pretty much, from about 8 or 9 years old, I started to become a defenseman. That means I only played the defense in one of the two left or right side defensive position. There's 6 positions in ice hockey. There's right wing, left wing, center, left defense, right defense, and a goaltender. And I'll post a picture kind of explaining a little bit about this in my show notes at domdumas.com/23. But yeah, about this point in time, I started playing defense more regularly. I started to be a defenseman more often. I stopped being a forward. Maybe once or twice I was a goaltender, but that most of the time I was a defenseman. And then when we moved to Coon Rapids, I was about 10 years old, and I moved up to the next league, which would have been Pee Wees, which this was really exciting for me because I can remember as a kid, like I can remember now as a kid, I mean, even thinking back to when I was like 6 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, going with my dad to his Sunday night old timers hockey league. And this was in this indoor rink. And this was like one of the first times I'd ever seen an indoor rink outside of going to like an NHL game or something like that. And it was so amazing. I mean, we were all right there on the ice, and I didn't go very often. So, to go to one of these games, it was really a big thing for me. And this particular rink that I went to was at Cook Memorial Arena. And when I started playing Pee Wees, I started playing inside Cook Memorial Arena, which was really pretty cool. And I loved it. I mean, we had like proper boards, we had benches, we had locker rooms instead of a warming room, and things like that. And actually, Cook Memorial Arena, I can remember this. I can remember when I first started playing hockey there, the inside of the hockey rink was actually two-toned. It was brown on the bottom and yellow on the top, which kind of sounds really bad now, but it was very distinctive for us at the time. And then I can remember about the time that I was getting into the next level of hockey, which I'll talk about in a little bit here, when they repainted the whole color scheme to actually match the high school hockey team, which Coon Rapids, their colors are red and white. So they repainted the entire inside of the building red and white with a big cardinal and a hockey player, and it was really pretty cool. And I remember being there when that happened. But yeah, then Pee Wees, it was really kind of amazing. I mean, like I said, I started playing indoor games. I still was in the house league, which meant that really you didn't travel around very much, but we actually did, which is kind of weird. I mean, we went to Columbia Heights to play in Columbia Arena. We played in Anoka from time to time, in Osseo and stuff, but mostly we played like all the local Pee Wee teams. Local as in the teams that were in Coon Rapids that everybody played at Cook Memorial Arena. Sometimes we'd have a practice at Columbia Arena. And that was another thing. I remember watching my dad coach hockey at Columbia Arena, so when I got a chance to play there, that was pretty cool. And then, but mostly, we played inside Coon Rapids with the Pee Wee leagues. And this was really kind of amazing. I mean, like I said, indoor hockey was like, I'd always played outside, so this was really fun. And plus, about this time, I also got into, my dad started registering me for the spring leagues. Now, the spring leagues, again, like I said just a little bit ago, this is when we went to Columbia Arena. Now, Columbia Arena was this massive complex that had 2 rinks, and it was really, I can remember when I was playing there, I remember how exciting it was because my dad used to coach teams here for, I believe, at the bantam or midget level. I forget exactly what level they were, but it was just amazing to be able to play on the same ice that my dad had coached teams for. Just like when I started playing at Cook Memorial Arena, it was amazing for me. It was incredible for me. It was exciting for me because I was now playing ice hockey on the same ice that my dad used to play, that my dad was playing hockey on, because he was still playing hockey. He was still playing the Old Timers League on Sundays. So that was really, for me, it was really very exciting. And I played Pee Wees for about 2 years, and from age 10 to age 11. So 2 leagues, actually. It sounds like only one year, but it was actually 2 seasons. I played there for 2 seasons, and then my dad was kind of didn't like how some of the politics were at my age group, so he asked if he could have me try out for the next or if I could move up to the next level of hockey, which would have been bantams, which would have been in 1983. I'd have been about 12 years old, and they finally said yes. Okay, he can move up to the Bantam League on one condition, that you coach one of the C teams, because we have enough kids to have 4 C hockey teams, C Bantam hockey teams. You have to coach one of, but we only have 3 coaches, so you have to coach one of them. And my dad said yes. And this was like really a huge step for me, I feel, because I was one of the smallest guys in the league. I was one of the youngest guys in the league. And for the first time in my hockey career, there was checking. Now, Pee-wees, they got checking a little bit. A few years later, they could start checking in the Pee-wee League, but when I was playing Pee-wees, they didn't have checking. But then in Bantams, we started to be able to check, so we had to make sure we had like the proper shoulder pads and stuff like that. Because I can remember playing in mites and squirts in early years, like the first year of Pee-wees, I didn't have shoulder pads because my dad didn't feel I needed them. And I don't remember ever checking at that point in time. Maybe running into the boards with another guy, but it wasn't like we did it on purpose. But then when I got to Bantams, we had to make sure I had the proper shoulder pads, and we got proper breezers, which are like what looks like shorts. Don't worry, I'll post pictures about all of this type of equipment that may not sound very familiar to some of my listeners out there, like shoulder pads, breezers. Shoulder pads, you don't think of shoulder pads like football shoulder pads. They're hockey shoulder pads and American football shoulder pads are very, very different. The hockey shoulder pads are a little bit smaller, give you a little bit more freedom of movement. Or at least they did when I was a kid. And then the breezers are kind of like the shorts-looking things, but they're full of padding, shin pads, and elbow pads, So we made sure that I was fully equipped, had to wear a helmet all the time, Well, I can remember in squirts, and Pee-wees, mites, squirts, and Bantams, all the way up. In American ice hockey, you have to wear helmets all the way up until probably you get into... when I was younger, they called it the Juveniles League, which is what you played after you got out of high school if you didn't go and play at college. If you went and played at college, you still had to wear a helmet, but that's a whole nother thing. And then I played in the C Bantam League. I remember I had to go through the tryouts so they could decide on which team I was going to play for. And of course, nobody was going to choose me. For one, I was the youngest guy in the league. 2, I was a bit small, being the youngest guy in the league. And 3, my dad was coaching, so who was going to take their son away, a coach's son away from him? So they let my dad choose me as my being on what team. And this is like the first time I started traveling. We had more and more games. We played. I can remember playing hockey in Osseo. I can remember playing hockey in Fridley, in Champlin, in Anoka more, at Columbia Arena. We were there more often. It was really, and at about this point in time, my position was set. I was a defenseman. So, and you know what? I loved it. I didn't care. I mean, I didn't want to be a forward. I loved being a defenseman. I was kind of like, I was like the last line of defense. If a forward was coming down the ice, my objective was to stop this guy from scoring on my goaltender. So and I really enjoyed that. And I played 2 years in the Bantam League. The second year I had to try out. And of course, my dad was coaching again. But this time he was coaching, they asked him to move up a level in coaching, so he was coaching the B2 Bantams. And when I tried out, obviously, I made the B2 Bantam team. Wasn't bad enough to make the C team. There was a B1 Bantams, which I wasn't quite good enough for. My dad kind of felt differently. And the A Bantams, which I never felt I was that great of a hockey player. I loved playing. I had a passion for playing, but you needed to be really something special to be at that A level. At least that's what I thought. But apparently, in some cities, there is a lot of politics involved, and you have to be you need to know the right people, have to be friends with the right families and stuff like that to get onto the team. I don't know if that was the case. Some people say it was, some people say it wasn't. Doesn't matter. I never felt I was good enough to play on the A team. But anyway, so I played on the B2 team, and this is the first time I remember we actually had a sponsor. Now, before, when I played C Bantams and when I played Pee Wees and when I played Squirts and I played Mites, usually the parents or the the parents of the teams of the whole level, they would kind of get together and everybody would have like similar jerseys. For example, when I played for C Bantams, everybody's jerseys, although there was a red team, there was a white team, there was a blue team, I was on the blue team, and I believe there was a green team, but I'm not sure about the fourth color. But anyway, all of the jerseys said Mr. T's Dry Cleaning on the front, and then we had our numbers on the back, and then some of us had our names put across the back if we wanted and stuff like that. But when I got into B2 Bantams, this is the first time like we had an individual sponsor for our team. And as a matter of fact, I can remember this. Our sponsors was CNC Grinding, which was like a metalworking company. They bought us jerseys. They bought us jackets. They helped get us into tournaments all across Minnesota. Oh my God, we had like the coolest jackets that I can remember. Everybody, even the A's, they were kind of a bit jealous of us until they decided to get their own jackets. We had this is the 80s, of course, so we had this nice flop over collar with this like a wind jacket, and it was a really nice jacket, snapped up, and of course you had to be in style, so you never snapped the bottom two buttons. And it was a nice red, black, and white jacket. It was really a sharp-looking jacket, and it was great. And we did all right. I mean, we weren't great. We didn't go to state, but we did okay. We had fun, and like I said, I was at this point in time, I was still really loving playing hockey. And then about this point in time, my dad and my mother separated, and my dad moved, and he moved to Wisconsin. So at this point in time, for the next season, again, I decided with my mom's help, of course, she helped talk to the league for me. We decided that I would jump again another league year. So when I was in 9th grade, I should have been playing my 3rd year of Bantams, which most people did. Or actually, most people played 2 years of Bantams, and their 2nd year being 9th grade. So 8th and 9th grade, they'd be playing Bantams, where I played 7th and 8th grade in Bantams. So for my 9th grade year, we talked to the school or to the organization, and they gave me permission to jump up a league if I really wanted to. And I was like, yeah, I want to jump up a league. So they decided, okay, you can go ahead and try out for the midgets team. Now, I thought I was small for the league when I started playing Bantams. But when I started playing midgets, holy cow, I couldn't believe it. I mean, some of these guys were like massive, and they were huge and fast. And I mean, I was a decent hockey player. I wasn't this phenomenal hockey player. Don't get me wrong. Just because I was going a year ahead didn't mean I was this incredibly outstanding hockey player. I mean, I was decent. But with playing for the Bantams, I can remember getting into arguments with my coaches because my dad had a very particular style of hockey, and they had a very different style of hockey. And they used to give me a bad time saying, oh, this isn't your dad's hockey anymore. You need to learn how to play our style of hockey and stuff like that. But then, of course, we ended up working those arguments out in the end. But because I was so small compared to everybody else, I can remember I ended up becoming one of the better poke checkers in the league. I mean, because these guys, I wasn't phenomenally fast, but I was okay. And it was just really, really difficult to check these guys, because when I checked them, I would bounce off because I was a small guy compared to most of them. I forgot to tell you, when I tried out, I actually made the B1 midgets team, which was amazing. I didn't play C midgets. I didn't play B2 midgets. I was good enough. to play B1 midgets. So that was really exciting for me. And now these guys are getting really big, for me. And these guys are like 16 years old, some of them. So it was like, for me, I was like blown away, but I loved it. It was just such a thrill, and I love being challenged. Now, I only played midgets for 1 year because after that season ended, a little bit later on, I ended up, by the next hockey season, my dad was coaching not in Coon Rapids, sorry. My dad was coaching in Hudson, Wisconsin. And I had talked to him about possibly moving there because I loved playing hockey for my dad. I admit it. He was one of my favorite coaches. Out of all the coaches that I had, he was one of my favorites. And he really understood how the game was played. Being a guy who grew up playing hockey, he played hockey in college. He played some semi-pro, tried out for the Olympics. So he had a really great understanding of the game of hockey. And he was also a great coach. I mean, he was a good player and he was a great coach. So playing for my dad was really, it was a lot of fun. I admit it. I wanted to play for him as long as I could. So I moved to Hudson. Now in Hudson, Wisconsin, in Wisconsin in general, if I remember correctly, they didn't have a midget team. So I had to step back a year level now and play Bantams. Now this is really weird because now instead of being one of the smallest guys in the league, I'm one of the biggest guys in the league, and it was fun. And then so we started practicing, we started playing, and we're getting ready for the season to start. I'm playing with the guys. I can remember my first practice with this team. They were coming down the ice. We were doing this drill where the coach, my dad, would shoot the puck into the corner, and two guys would race into the corner, fight for the puck, and then try and score on the goaltender. And I remember because of coming from a different hockey background, I lined this guy up in the corner and just leveled him. Picked up the puck, come around, and shot the puck. I didn't score, but it was pretty cool. This is the first time I'd been 3 years in checking, and a lot of these guys, this was their first year in checking, and I just leveled this guy. And, of course, I got into a bit of trouble for it. My dad was a bit upset. He said, "You didn't need to line him up like that." I was like, "Sorry, I'm just playing, And he's like, "Yeah, but he's your own teammate." I didn't know. But, yeah. And it was a lot of fun. So I stepped back to play to play Bantams. They didn't have different levels of Bantams, actually. And I didn't have to try out because there was just enough people coming out for the team to make a team. And then just before the league started, the coach for the JV team, the junior varsity team, quit. So they needed a coach, but they also didn't quite have enough people to field a team, but they wanted a junior varsity team. So my dad said, "I'll coach him, but I have to be able to supplement the team with kids from my Bantam team." And they were like, "Okay." So he coached Bantams and he coached the junior varsity for Hudson, Wisconsin. So I ended up playing for two teams. So I played twice as many games of hockey in this particular season. And again, now I'm back to playing games outdoors, which was kind of weird, but still, it was still a lot of fun. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. And one of the great things is my stepbrother, this guy, Chris, was an indoor soccer player, a wrestler, never played hockey a day in his life. Now, I had met him a few times before I moved in with my dad in Hudson, my dad and his wife at the time. And she had a son who was Chris. So when we found out I was coming to Hudson, he was like, "Hey, you know what? I want to play hockey." So he decided he wasn't going to sign up for indoor soccer or wrestling. And this is kid, he was a great wrestler and he was a great soccer player. He came out and he played hockey for the first time in his life. Now, he wasn't the greatest skater. He really struggled skating. But I'll tell you what. Put a pair of goalie pads on him, or put a set of goalie pads on him, put him in the net. He was a phenomenal goaltender. I can still remember. He got, counting our regular season games and the spring league, because my dad wanted us to all play together even more. The spring league, that following spring after the hockey season ended, Chris Scott achieved 9 shutouts. And on his 9th shutout, we won that game 9-0. It was unbelievable. Chris was a phenomenal goaltender. Now, after this, playing the junior varsity and playing bantams, the following year I would have been a junior in high school. I ended up trying out for the high school team. Now, at about this point in time, I was kind of getting a little bit done with hockey. I was kind of getting more into professional wrestling. I had started being a professional wrestler in the NWF, and then when I moved to Wisconsin, I was done. I mean, I played a junior varsity and I played bantams with my dad, and then when in the summer, I moved back to the Minnesota, and I started getting back into wrestling, and that was going great. And then tragedy struck. My mother was killed in a car accident, which was really sad. It was devastating, actually. And we had nowhere to go, so we had a choice. We could either move to Roseau, or I could move back to Hudson with my dad. So we moved back to Hudson with my dad, but at this point in time, I felt like I was kind of done with hockey. I mean, my level of hockey play, I'd reached its peak. So it was like junior bantams, midgets, junior varsity. I think if I'd have been in a bigger school, we had more people playing. To be totally honest, if I were to look back at it now, if we had more people trying out for the hockey team in Hudson, I'd have never made the varsity team. But I'm okay with that. I still loved the game. I loved to watch it and stuff like that. So I kind of accidentally on purpose failed off the hockey team that year, my 11th year in high school, and then I did it again my senior year in high school in 12th grade. Not a bright thing to do. But, these things happen. And then I kind of drifted away from hockey a little bit. Not a little bit, I stopped playing. I helped my dad coach one time when he was coaching squirts, and they ended up going to state, but that was still... I pretty much was done playing hockey. I enjoyed coaching and stuff like that. And I'm sure now if I was given the opportunity to coach, I'd probably take it up because, I still love the game of hockey. But, that was it, I mean, I was done playing hockey. So now that's my career in playing ice hockey. So I hope I didn't bore you with that part of it. Now we're going to talk about the NHL. I still love, and at times in my life, I drifted away from watching hockey, but I love watching hockey. And I can remember going to Johnstown and being able to watch the Johnstown Chiefs play in the old War Memorial Arena, and it was phenomenal. Just being at a hockey game and going to the Hershey Park and watching the Hershey Bears play hockey, it was amazing. And even as a kid, and this is where it gets really great for me, when I was growing up, Minnesota had their own hockey team. It was the Minnesota North Stars, and I loved them. I loved watching them. They were green, gold, and white. That was their colors. And they were in Minnesota up until about 1994. And that's when the owner decided that the owners of the team move the team to Dallas, Texas. And I was really upset about that. I was really furious at the coach. As a matter of fact, at the owners. I was like, how could you take the Minnesota North Stars out of Minnesota? One. Two, the Dallas team, the people in Dallas decided they wanted to keep the name, they keep the logo. They could keep the logo. And it would be very similar to like the Dallas Cowboys, because the Cowboys had a great big star on the side of their helmet. So now they have the Dallas Stars, so they had a great big star on the center of their uniform. That made me really angry, because if hockey ever came back to Minnesota, we could never use the name the North Stars anymore, because the Stars were now in Dallas. You can't have the Stars and the North Stars. It just doesn't sound right. So being very upset, I didn't, like a few of my friends, they continued supporting the Stars. Even though they went to Dallas, they continued supporting the Dallas Stars. Not me. I was done with the Stars completely. I wanted nothing to do with them. I would actually cheer against them when I could see them play a game. But at this point in time, when I was in the Navy, my dad had moved from Minnesota and Wisconsin actually, he was living in Minnesota. He was living in Wisconsin, moved back to Minnesota when I was in the Navy. While I was in the Navy, he moved to New York. So I was like, hey, you know what? The New York Rangers, they have a great name. I like that name. They got great colors, red, white, and blue. I'm going to follow the New York Rangers. So I started following the New York Rangers. I still kind of follow them a little bit. And they were great. I mean, I loved watching them play. They were quite physical, a physical team. They had some great scores. They had some great players. Mark Messier being one of them. He was a phenomenal hockey player at the time. And I kind of watched the New York Rangers from about 1994 until 2000. And then in 2000, something really exciting happened. Minnesota got a team back. They ended up getting an expansion team. Now, they put out a request from all their fans of Minnesota hockey to submit names, and whatever name they decided to choose, that person would get, like, I think it was a lifetime season tickets. Oh, I wish I'd have come up with a name. But they got a really cool name and a really cool logo, and that was the Minnesota Wild. Is the Minnesota Wild, and I love them. They're an okay team. They've made the playoff the last few years. They haven't quite got to the Stanley Cup level yet, but they're getting there. They're going to get there. But yeah, so I kind of started listening to them on computer radio at the time, internet radio, which wasn't very good. I had to go to the Minnesota Wild's webpage, and then I could listen to a pre-played game and things like that. And I kind of, it was exciting, but I kind of fell out of the Minnesota watching hockey and stuff like that because the person I was with at the time, my ex-wife, she wasn't a big sports fan. So sometimes I would watch football, not very often. I'd listen to a hockey game. Sometimes I'd catch a hockey game. She'd been to a few Hershey Bears games with me and stuff like that, but it just wasn't something that really excited her. But then when I moved to Thailand, it was like I kind of was out of the loop of hockey. Not kind of. I was completely out of the loop for hockey. And then something happened. One of my friends started talking about hockey. One of my friends here, I believe online, on Facebook, he started posting about his team, which was the Pittsburgh Penguins. Thanks, Ralph. Love ya. Talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins, and it kind of got me interested in, well, how are the Wild doing? So I started kind of paying attention to their scores. They'd made the playoffs. And with talking to Tracy, we decided, hey, we'll just get the NHL package for next year, and we'll get the full package so I can watch the Stanley Cup playoffs, and I can watch games from back to from the original 6, which would have been like a long time ago, first televised games, which would probably, if I'm not mistaken, would have been the 1950s. It was great. Now, the first season that we had the package, the Wild did okay. They made the playoffs. That was really exciting. And Tracy started kind of getting into them, and then now she's really into them. And I'm really into watching hockey. I love watching the game if I can. Sometimes, because like if I have something going on, I'll keep an eye on the score if they were playing, and then at night I could watch the hockey on TV when I got home because we had the package, and Tracy loves that, So it was really exciting. Tracy this year was really into the scores, and we had a rough time about the mid stretch of the season that made it really difficult for both of us because they lost a lot of games. They ended up firing their head coach and getting a really good new head coach. We'll see how he does, see if he's hired back next year. But yeah, the Minnesota Wild, they're awesome. I'm a Minnesota boy. I love all Minnesota teams, Minnesota Vikings, Minnesota Wild. If I'm paying attention to basketball, which I sometimes have a look, I look at the Minnesota Timberwolves. I sometimes look at the baseball scores, so I'm looking at the Minnesota Twins and stuff like that. But hockey and football, for hockey, it's the Minnesota Wild, and I love them, So if you ever get a chance to watch hockey, I recommend watching a game on TV can be a little bit difficult, especially if you don't know what's going on. And it's a very fast-paced game. If you get a chance to go to a live game, I recommend doing it. It's so exciting. It's so much fun. But, hey, that's all for now. I want to thank you very much. I want you to always remember, if you have a passion about something, be proud of it, not ashamed of it. All right, thank you very much. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Please rate my show, or leave a comment or make suggestions of what you would like me to talk about. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Dom Dumas, on Twitter at Dom Dumas, and on Instagram, Dom_Dumas. Thanks a lot.